Now we've been studying how to find the constant from a table, and that's when we look at each of our ratios, our y over x, and we see 6 over 1, 12 over 2, 18 over 3, and we simplify them, and if we get one number, that's our constant, and that's what goes in our equation. But now we're going to start looking at our rate of change. And our rate of change is found by looking at the change in, now that's the symbol for that you're going to use for change in, the change in y over the change in x on my table. So I'm going to start off by looking at the first section down to the second one. My change in y is I increased by 6. So my change in y is 6. Looking at that same piece of my table, my change in x is I increased by 1. So 1. And that simplifies to 6. So my rate of change equals 6. And that actually goes into my equation in the same part, y equals 6x. Y equals 6x means that when x equals 1, y equals 6. Let's see why. Y equals 6 times, now in place of the x, I'm going to put the 1. And we get 6 times 1 is 6. So when x equals 1, y equals 6. And that's true right here. Now let's try one more. How about this one right here? Y equals 6x. And in place of the x, I'm going to put a 3. Y equals 6 times 3. And I get y equals 18. So when x is 3, y is 18. That checks out also. So my equation is correct. Now I'm going to look at a table that's a little bit more tricky. Okay, now here's an example of a table that looks a little more tricky because we're used to seeing x increase by 1. But as you see, first it goes up by 3, and then it goes up by 3, then it goes up by 1, and then 2. So we're going to have to examine our change in y over our change in x for the same section. So, of course, this is my rate of change in y over change in x. So I'm going to look at my y. My change in y from the first to the second was an increase of 9. My change in x from the first to the second is an increase in 3. 9 over 3 simplifies. I can put it in my calculator, 9 divided by 3, or change it from a fraction to a decimal, and it simplifies to 3. Now I'm going to check my rate of change at another part of my table. So I'm going to check from maybe these two right here. Okay? So I'm going to check my change in y from 24 to 30 is 6. My change in x is 2. Which simplifies to 3 as well. So I can look at any part of my table. I just need to make sure that I'm looking at the same numbers for my y and my x for that ratio. So my rate of change is 3. So my equation would be y equals 3x. Now I'm going to put one for you to try in your notebook on your own, and I want you to find the rate of change showing which part of your table you're finding the change in. Now in your notebook, I want you to draw the table and then find your rate of change. I'll write that out for you. Find your rate of change. And I want you to write it as the change in y over the change in x. And I would like for you to write your equation. And since it's proportional, our equations are going to be in the form y equals kx.